Hi everyone, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, great. Bring some warmth into the room. It's snowy outside, it's beautiful, but it's cold. So we are very grateful that you're able to be here with us today. Thanks so much for treading. I don't know how far you've come from, but even just a block is a lot in this weather. So thank you. Thanks so much. My name is Eugenia. I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator with the Ontario Council for International Cooperation, OCIC for short. And I'm very happy to be here in partnership with a group that reached out to us recently to get this event and something a little bit bigger in place, but as you know, we've had to reduce what this looked like due to climate change. So it's quite timely, I think, that we're speaking about these things in the way that we will be. And again, thank you. So before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is home for many, many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to live and to work in this land. And I think that this acknowledgement and this awareness is particularly important when we're talking about climate and when we're talking about partnerships and relationships. And so I will just say that let's honor the teachings that our Indigenous peoples and our First Nations have shared with us for thousands of years, and hopefully we can keep on building those relationships, keep understanding ourselves. Myself as a settler, I know that it's important that I understand where I stand and how we've come to be here and how we're going to move forward together with our Indigenous partners. So let's get started. Great. So I think I'm up still. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about OCIC and how Natalie and the Unified Toronto and Drawdown Toronto team reached out to us a few months ago to come together for this particular topic, this nexus between gender equality and climate change. And it's great. We thought it's a fantastic topic. It's timely. We're talking about in our sector, in the international development sector, things like FIAP, the Feminist International Assistance Policy, which directly relates to, first of all, gender equality, women and girls, but also there are many different pieces to it, including climate action. And so it's important that we're talking about this on the ground, and it's important that we're doing this in a grassroots way, that we're doing this in community and with the people that are here, that are in Toronto, that are in Ontario, that are part of our membership as well. So that's NGOs, non-government organizations, institutions, and other people that work in international development that are connected to the council and that we help support. And this is a way that we help support the sector, is by opening dialogue, by helping with capacity building pieces. And in some way, this is it. This will hopefully end up being a report or something that we can share with the rest of the sector. So it'll start here and it'll start with your voices, but hopefully we will be able to amplify that much more wider than just the conversation here. So that's exciting to us. I think I'll leave it there. Feel free to come say hi after this. I'm the Public Engagement Coordinator, so anything that has to do with this type of thing, I'm happy to chat, I'm happy to partner. So I just want to say that. Thanks for this beautiful partnership that we've been able to build together. And part of our team is also here, Lisa at the registration table, Samir just in the black sweater, Elisa at the back doing communications. So we're here in full force, and yes, and I just want to say our board member Isabel has invited some people over to the World Accord office. World Accord is one of our members in Kitchener-Waterloo. So we have a Drawdown satellite event happening thanks to World Accord, and some people are gathered there as well. So we'll have them in this sort of presence with us throughout the event. And we are also going to be hosting Katharine from, I think, California is where she lives. Where is she?
She's normally based in Florida, but I don't know where she's calling from.
Okay, so we'll find out. So we're really all over the planet, over this online sort of hybrid space. So quite excited. Let's get the conversations going, and I'm going to pass it on to Natalie now.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We've been planning this for a long time, and I'm just so excited to see you actually here and discover
what we're going to share, because we don't know yet. It's an unfolding mystery. I'm here on behalf of Unify Toronto and Drawdown Toronto. Unify Toronto started up in 2011 with the aim of accelerating the movement towards a just, sustainable, and fulfilling world by bringing together change makers in Toronto around those topics. And one of the things that we've been doing since 2013 is holding public dialogues every month or so, sometimes more. And in the last year, we have been focusing on spreading the word around Project Drawdown. So John and Satya catalyzed both Unify Toronto and Drawdown Toronto, and we all got quite excited about Project Drawdown. Can someone bring me a book? So Project Drawdown is led up by Paul Hawken, who brought together scientists and researchers from all around the world to look at existing climate change solutions and to identify the top 80 solutions that already exist, plus 20 coming attractions. And they've done the math and modeled these solutions, and they're saying that if we scale them up together, that we can actually achieve drawdown by 2050. And what that means is that the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will begin to reduce year over year. And that will begin to reverse the process of global warming. So we all thought this was a more inspiring, positive, constructive, comprehensive approach to climate change than anything we had ever seen. And we wanted to spread the word. And so we have started kind of incubating Drawdown Toronto. We've been hosting introductions to Project Drawdown, 3 courses, 4-part courses on Project Drawdown, which John and Satya and Charlene over there have been leading. And we've also hosted sector summits on each of the 7 sectors into which Drawdown groups the 80 solutions. So we've hosted 6 of them so far, and the 7th is the women and girls sector. And we were hoping to have that summit this evening, but we've had to postpone. And so stay tuned for when that's going to happen. And this particular event, it was my light that got lit up around this, because I was quite surprised when I saw the 80 solutions that were identified. Number 1 is refrigerant management. I mean, these are not the usual suspects. And 3 of the solutions were girls' education, family planning, and support to women smallholders. And as someone who'd worked in international development for a couple of decades, I thought it was pretty interesting that that link between gender equality and reversing global warming was being made in a way that was so scientifically founded and, you know, having done the math and all the modeling. And I wanted to get the word out to the international development sector in Canada. So as Eugenia said, this is the beginning. I think we're going to be planting some seeds here that will begin a conversation within the sector and in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and beyond. So I'm really excited. There'll be resources for us, very knowledgeable about Project Drawdown, and Charlene as well. And we've got Patricia Cambridge, who will be recording the key insights and themes and questions that come up in a visual way for us. My co-facilitator, again, what Eugenia was saying about climate change, Katharine Dyer, she's in Guelph and was unable to come because of the storms. And Andrea, thank you, is also here, part of our Drawdown Toronto core team, and she's got information on the Drawdown Eco Challenge, which is coming up and which all of you can join. So this is going to be a very interactive event. We'll have a chance to connect with Katharine Wilkinson. I'll introduce her a little bit later. And it mostly will be conversing together in small groups. So I want to start with a round of introductions. And for that, I'd love it if we were standing in an oval over here. We can include our friends in the Kitchener Waterloo.
We have Ray over there. Hi, Ray. He's actually video recording. Sorry, this just came now. So as you can see, he's handling the camera over there, and mostly it's for our records, and hopefully we can have a good enough video to share after this on YouTube channels, on our website, that sort of thing.
He won't be filming this part here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just introduce Dr. Katharine Wilkinson. She's joining us through Zoom. Katharine is the Vice President of Communication and Engagement at Project Drawdown, and she is also senior writer for this book on Drawdown, which was a New York Times bestseller in 2017. And Katharine, we're so delighted to have you. Hi, can you see me? Hi. Welcome. Where are you talking to us from?
I'm at home in Atlanta.
Atlanta. Wonderful. Would you like to just say a few words before we put the TED Talk on?
Sure. Hi, all. It's really nice to be able to be with you in electronic form today. Thank you for gathering. I'm not sure what the familiarity in the room is with Project Drawdown, but I'll just share a little bit of context that maybe is helpful to know kind of where did this TED Talk even come from? What's the body of work that it emerged from? So Project Drawdown is a very small, but we like to think relatively mighty nonprofit that really functions as a clearinghouse for climate solutions. We have an international team of researchers, different cohorts of fellows over the past few years who have essentially scoured humanity's wisdom for technologies and practices that can change our current trajectory of seemingly ever rising greenhouse gas emissions, which, as you all know, already has us in completely uncharted territory for the human species. We have never lived on a planet like this. And our name, Project Drawdown, right, comes from the idea that instead of continuing on this disastrous current path, we need to aim for drawdown, the point in time when the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere peaks and then starts to steadily decline year to year. It's really about a threshold at which we head back to conditions that are most conducive for life on this planet. The only one that we know for sure is conducive for life. And we look in our research both at solutions that avoid sending greenhouse gases up, but also those that bring carbon back home through sequestration. And we look across a whole set of sectors. And one of those sectors includes what we call a focus on women and girls, or gender equity related solutions. So this particular talk sort of zooms in on one segment of our work, but it also covers food, transport, electricity, buildings and cities, materials, land use, all the other things. So this is one piece of a broader mosaic. And I think with that, I'll let you all dive in.
Thanks for that, Katharine. So we'll play the video now. And if you can just hold on, and we'll bring you back for the Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you.
There are two powerful phenomena.
So in just a couple of moments, you'll have a chance to ask questions of Katharine. And while we connect with her, I'm going to invite you to take 2 or 3 minutes, turn to a neighbor, and just buzz around what you just heard. What were your initial reactions? What stood out for you? What moved you? And what questions might you want to ask with Katharine? When you hear the bell, we'll come back and be able to ask questions.
I'm interested in drawdown. This all makes sense.
I invite you to bring your conversations to a close. Maybe I can get us started, and as you're ready to ask a question, I'm going to invite you to come up here. We've got Katharine on the screen here, and you can address her directly. And if you're ready with the question, if you can, while somebody else is asking theirs, you can come and sit down just so that the flow is smooth. We have about 15 minutes for this. So I'm going to start with the question.
Hi, Katharine.
Hi.
Thank you so much for that heartfelt presentation. It's one of the things I love about Drawdown, that it really addresses us as whole human beings and not just the head and not just our fear and anger, but it really engages us and mobilizes passion and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you.
So a question for you: to what extent has had the potential of gender equality to reduce global warming been recognized before Project Drawdown?
Sure. So all of our work, right, in many ways, there's nothing new in our work. Perhaps what is new in it is bringing it all into one place, making it accessible, hopefully in a deeply human way. But we are very much, I think of as just kind of curators and translators of humanity's collective wisdom. So there certainly have been people working at this intersection of gender justice, gender equity, and climate for a long, long time. That has had very much a kind of sideline presence in the broader climate conversations. This is always the area where kind of eyebrows raise and proverbial light bulbs seem to go off when we're sharing the work. And I think there is a piece of that also that is about reframing what frankly has been usually a deeply problematic conversation about population control, right? And it's very explicit in the way that I wrote about these in the TED Talk and elsewhere, that it is choice, not control, that is where the potential for impact sits. And I think that is really important as well, because I think by and large, the environmental movement has not been a very good sort of shepherd and contributor to this conversation. It has often had a sort of draconian and sometimes, frankly, quite misogynistic and racist undertones to controlling the choices of women rather than supporting access and securing rights that then gives people better opportunity to make choices about their own lives. I think I'll leave it there.
So a follow-up question: what difference has it made in the world for people to know more about this link through the work of Project Drawdown?
Yeah, this is a somewhat anecdotal answer, but I think there are two pieces where we have seen some impact. One is that for folks who think about themselves as being in the climate space, right? Climate funders, climate investors, climate solution implementers, what have you. We have heard from folks, oh, Drawdown made me aware of a real gap in our work, or an area where we have not been actively thinking or engaging, and it has challenged us to create a new vertical of investment, or to think about where we might need to be partnering that we haven't in the past, where there is actually a gender component to our work and we haven't been thinking about it that way. So there are some very specific examples on that side. I had a conversation like that with Peter Knight, who used to run Generation Investments, which is Al Gore's investment fund. And he just said, this was a total blind spot for us. So I think that's exciting. And then I think on the other side, you have folks who have been working on reproductive healthcare and reproductive rights. You have folks who've been working on access to education, girls' education, universal education, or supporting smallholder farmers who had not thought of themselves as being in the climate space. And I've had those conversations with leaders at CARE, at Planned Parenthood, elsewhere, thinking, we sort of do some work on gender aware and gender focused adaptation support or resilience support, but we hadn't thought about some other parts of our work as being climate solutions. So there's, I think, interesting reframing that's going on, and a sense that we are pulling in the same direction more than we sometimes realize in our fragmented and siloed ways of working in institutions.
Thank you so much. We've got a question here from Kathy and Jim. Jim, did you want to? And anybody else who has a question, come on up and sit here. And if you want to face Katharine so she can see you, that's you there.
Okay. All right. Hello.
Hi.
This will be good as a bad example, and then this will induce other people to do better. I remember seeing some book reviews of Hawking's work in 2017 now. But I'm not a student of Drawdown, so I don't know what's all in there. But for some of us in the room, this all seems kind of obvious. But for those 80 solutions, I don't know if there's a precise research about why these things are not being implemented for political and institutional reasons. There are probably very eloquent voices in the Global South that are marginalized by a variety of institutions in the Global South and in the North. And there's sort of the critique of market solutions, which have brought us the large problem. So I don't know if that's all in the book, but I just, that was responding to your talk, and that's just to get the conversation going here. So I don't know if you can respond to any or all of that.
Sure. So you can imagine that in a 250-page book about 100 climate solutions, right, you can only do so much in that body of work. And it was really sort of an enormous effort just to understand under different scenarios of kind of aggressive scaling what is even possible with these solutions. We didn't know that before Drawdown, and we certainly didn't have any kind of apples to apples comparison of these different solutions to understand, kind of how much proverbial juice you could squeeze from them. And so that has really been the focus of the work. When you begin to think about impediments, political or otherwise, this is global work, and oftentimes that kind of analysis is deeply, deeply contextual. And our team at Drawdown would not presume to be the experts to do that kind of analysis, right? What's possible in my home state of Georgia is very different than what's possible in the state of California, much less country to country, city to city, business to business, and all the rest. So I think it very much depends on kind of what level of agency you're looking at in terms of implementation, what the context is, et cetera. What we hope that the work is helping folks to do is to think about the landscape of climate solutions wherever they sit, right, whatever the context they're a part of, more holistically and with a kind of rounder understanding of what's in our toolbox. And I'll also say that every solution that's modeled in Drawdown, the 20 coming attractions aside, but those 80 solutions are all there because they are already being implemented. They are not someday maybe solutions, right? They are already in hand. They are commonly available, scientifically valid, economically viable, and we have great data about most of them, and sufficient data about enough of them to do the kinds of projections that we did. So there, I think, looking at the barriers is one piece, but also understanding what's working in the places where they are scaling is also very important. Some of you all may have seen Hal Harvey recently released a book that I think is a really excellent kind of companion piece to Drawdown, which is about policies, specifically energy-focused policies that are already in place and already working. And I think there's a lot of room for more of that kind of complementary analysis about other sectors as well. So I don't mean that answer to be a cop-out. It's very, very important work, but I'm not sure we're the right folks really to do that, at least at this stage with our 6-person team.
Thank you so much. We're near the end of the time together, but we have 2 more questions. I'm wondering if we might be able to squeeze them in.
Yeah, shall we maybe, could both of them get asked and then I'll try to answer them together?
Great.
Okay.
Hi, Catherine. My name's Kathy. Women have amazing capacity, so I'm sure you can answer all 3. I'm excited to hear you talk, about the ecosystems and ecological thinking. I think that's the movement away from mechanistic thinking that we need to move forward to. My question is about what ideas do you have about bringing women to decision tables? That's an area that I work in. I'd be interested to hear your answer to that. Thank you.
Hi, Katharine. Thank you so much for a great TED Talk. I thought it was amazing. And then I just want to see or hear your thoughts about how you see this project evolving in terms of a longer time period, like 10, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted a quick repeat of how effective it would be to empower women through the ways you mentioned in terms of actual CO2 emissions from the atmosphere versus solar panels. Or
let me start with the last one and then work my way back. So first, let me just give you our website, because while there's a lot of content in the book, there's a lot of that content is also on our website, and there are also more technical details. So if you go to drawdown.org, and then you go to the section of the website on solutions, you'll be able to see what's covered. The research team ran 3 different scenarios: the plausible, optimistic, and what we call the drawdown scenario. So the numbers are different depending on those scenarios. What's in the book and what's kind of most prominent on the website are the results of our most conservative, what we call the plausible scenario. And we've broken out on and offshore wind, rooftop solar from utility scale. So depending how you want to think about it, you can, lump them or look at them separately for the apples to apples. But for the combined kind of integrated impact of education and family planning, we've just had an update to those models. So it's just over 100 gigatons of avoided emissions over 30 years. For comparison's sake, onshore wind is roughly 90 gigatons. Please look at our website for those specifics, because our work continues to evolve, the modeling efforts continue. Maybe that's a good segue to how the project might be evolving. As of the 1st of October, we're so excited. We have a new executive director, John Foley, who is a renowned climate scientist, science communicator. He was previously at the helm of the California Academy of Sciences. And we have just kind of landed a strategic plan for what we're calling Drawdown 2.0, which is really about moving beyond describing drawdown and how we might reach it to actually helping move humanity towards achieving drawdown. And those aren't totally distinct things, but we're really going to shift our attention to how we, way beyond a book and the talks that we've currently done, how we continue to influence the global climate conversation to move past sort of despair, denial, and disengagement into kind of a paradigm of collective determination. So there'll be a lot of communication and campaign work happening on that side. And then we're also thinking about some kind of key partnerships around implementation, right? How can we help to nudge? What we're going to sort of aim for is influencing the movement of roughly $1 trillion of capital towards drawdown solutions, particularly those that aren't getting adequate investment or philanthropic support currently. Keep an eye on those areas. I think there will be some exciting things happening, but we'll also continue to sort of invest in our foundational core work that you all already know us for. And then bringing women to decision tables, man, I kind of want to turn that question around and learn more about how you're doing that. One of the projects I'm really excited about doing this year is specifically focused on how we might bring, very intentionally bring new women into climate leadership. I think this is a topic that just can feel so overwhelming, so impenetrable, too complex. Like, you know, it's not a party I think a lot of people want to come to, frankly. And we know, right, from the history of social movements, what is so effective is taking someone by the hand and saying, we need you, please join us. And, you know, helping to get folks sort of up to speed and owning their own voices in a space. So I'm working on a kind of pilot gathering this summer that we hope will be sort of half women already working on climate and half who have some kind of relevant platform in the world, which of course is basically everyone, and trying to bring that group together to deepen the network, to grow it, and to incubate kind of fresh leadership and collaboration. You know, Drawdown obviously is focused on the what's, right? The tools, the technologies, the practices, but getting to Drawdown means people picking up those tools in their various contexts and lives and leadership roles. And so I'm particularly excited about how to do that. I think we need a lot more kind of feminist leadership in the climate space. But I would love to know more about, what you all see working in terms of bringing more women to decision tables.
Thank you so much. And that's a great segue because we're going to be moving into rounds of discussion and a chance for each of us to share our ideas and inspirations.
Awesome.
Yeah, many, many thanks for your time and your wisdom and everything you bring.
It's been a pleasure to be with you all for a little bit, and I really look forward to hearing an update on sort of the highlights and outcomes of the conversation. So enjoy the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye, Catherine. Thanks.
So we've got the next hour or so for those small group conversations, and we're going to do it in a format that's called World Cafe. It was developed by Juanita Brown and David Isaacs about 25 years ago, and it's a method for creating a living network of collaborative dialogue around questions that matter. And it has 3 assumptions. The first one is that the knowledge and the wisdom that we need is right here. We have it. The second is that collective insight evolves from inviting individual contributions, listening for connections, listening into the middle, if you will, and drawing out the underlying and deeper themes and questions. And the third assumption is that the intelligence, the collective intelligence, evolves from the system listening to itself in diverse and creative ways. So what we're going to be doing is a way to have small group conversations, but in which all the parts talk to each other. So you're going to be somehow having a bigger, whole system conversation, even though you'll be in your groups of 4. We'll have 3 rounds, and the principles for the conversations will be, they're up there, and they're, I'm proposing that we speak from experience. So speak from where you sit or where you stand. Listen to learn. So really listen to yourself as well as to others for understanding. And be aware of your impact. Are you contributing? Are you making space for others? And finally, capture themes. And you're invited to do that on these flip chart papers. We'll have the same flip chart that will remain on the table for the 3 rounds. And you've got markers, you can doodle, draw, write, you don't need any artistic talent whatsoever. And what we're going to do is, you've also got more detailed guidelines for the conversations in this lovely graphic on the tent card. At each table, I'm going to invite you for this round to start, introduce yourselves, and then have one of you volunteer to be a table host. And the role of the table host is going to be, for this round, to encourage participation of everybody, monitor the time, help ensure that everybody's voice gets heard, even ideas that you disagree with, and inviting people to jot down their ideas on the flip chart. And then what we're going to do at the end of this round is that the table host is going to stay at the table and say goodbye to the others, who will each go to a different table, and we'll call them the travelers or the ambassadors of meaning. And then the table host will welcome the new arrivals, and you'll each have a chance to share highlights from the previous conversation that you've had. Thank you, everybody. Take a moment just to reflect from the 3 rounds that you had. Were there any deeper themes or questions that you felt emerging over the rounds? And I'm going to invite each of the tables to share, and it can be from the table host, but it could be from someone else as well. And we'll just go around. Hopefully we can do more than one go around of each table, so we'll have a couple of thoughts from each table. So anybody, and we'll hear from our Kitchener-Waterloo people as well.
One thing that came up that hadn't been brought up before was personal responsibility. Like, we can all see what's going to happen out there, but what about what's going on with at our home, and how are we dealing with electricity, with water, with etc. We had a lot of conversation around that.
Thank you, Shirley. Another table.
So the last piece we sort of came around to was this idea that education is a system. We need new models of education. We need to build on the knowledge that women hold, that diversity of knowledge, and that our top-down system of sitting in a classroom perhaps isn't the best way to learn. Anything else from our opinion here?
One of the things we talked about just in the topic of gender equity is to be inclusive of not just women but also men, and having those spaces, but also just being having them involved in some of the conversations as well.
I think something that came out really clearly in this last round was specifically around lessons learned from other countries, other models. So while we're speaking about new ways of knowing, new education models, whatever it might be, There were some really interesting examples and lived reality shared here from Ethiopia, for example, or from Bolivia, that we really need to look outside while we're doing lots of great work here, and it's true. There's also lots of great work being done through our international partners, so that's a lesson that I heard.
Great. Our friends in Kitchener-Waterloo.
So Shannon is going to share. Well, I guess I started off our conversation by saying that I am discouraged by the problem that the solutions in Drawdown and all things related to that can so easily be inhibited by politicians. Politicians are now so interested in becoming re-elected that the day they get into power, they make our life difficult with climate change and things like that. And I just wonder what we're going to do as a strategy against that, because it seems to happen on many, many levels, or to work with it now.
Great, thank you, Shannon. I think we have time for maybe one more key insight or theme from each table. And if there's anything that's specifically about what gets opened up by the way that Project Drawdown has highlighted how gender equality can actually help reduce global warming. Did anybody talk about what implications that might have for our international assistance policy, for programming in any of those areas, education, girls' education in general, I guess, family planning, agriculture, funding or fundraising implications, anything around that?
One of the things that came out at our first table from Amir was that family planning in particular is culturally and politically driven. And not only internationally, but also in the United States, for example, 80% or over 80% of hospitals in the US are now owned by the Catholic Church and are not interested in anything to do with family planning. So we often look out, and sometimes, and I'm including sort of Canada in that process, particularly as we look at the idea of privatizing healthcare here in Ontario, that we run a risk of losing what we think are our rights as women, even here in North America.
Yeah, one of the things that came up at our table, a couple of people mentioned, was just the importance of keeping the conversation going about the connection between the two, and to kind of look at programming. There was a comment about programming and seeing where that might fit into the programming to make that link. And then a comment about Katharine, who has had an experience of just the impact of bringing those two pieces together in building awareness of, wow, this is a really big piece that we missed. You know, how is it that we now fit it in, and what is the impact? So just keeping the conversation going and seeing how to bring this really key connection that we've brought together today into what we're doing.
Thank you, and hopefully this is the beginning of many more conversations to come.
I really like how the 100 solutions are broken down into a bit more specific solutions and innovative technologies and ideas, and that will really inspire others and increase awareness, and perhaps linking those themes and then coming up with a bit more ideas that could be scalable and that could meet some market opportunities depending on the context. And I was mentioning earlier actually some ideas, like in Ethiopia there are more civil societies and people introducing innovative solutions towards gender equality and climate action, like using the cup and linking the fact that women, when they menstruate, they can attend school and how it impacts their access to education, and then also linking and changing their behaviors and understanding their ecological footprint by using these type of tools. And it is becoming a lot more integrated, and the governments and local and culturally can be broken to accept these type of initiative. So I really like how it's broken down and maybe inspire more people.
But one thing that we've discussed briefly and comes to mind when thinking about programs and remembering that the interconnectedness between groups of society. So if we're putting emphasis on gender equality through women empowerment, which is very important, it's important then to also have into consideration what will be the changes and shift because of that empowerment. So we're discussing, for example, economic empowerment of women and the burden of work that comes to them, because usually it's not because you start having a business or managing a land or doing something that would have an effect on climate change that all your reproductive work is left behind, or it might be shared differently within the family. So you might have more children and end up doing some tasks that they weren't doing before, or how do you have that conversation with men as well in terms of sharing this overall burden of work. So that's an example for economic empowerment around land use. But I think if you look at any of those groups that you have looked today, it's always remembering that interconnectedness in the community. So if you're shifting things around and going to some more equal relationships, you would also have someone that would have to do things differently that you have probably thought through your program initially.
Let's hear from our Kitchener-Waterloo folk.
I was just thinking about how to localize this also. I was sharing with Shannon and Alisa that in France there was an initiative called Demain, which means tomorrow, about things that they could do in France. And then Quebec has another initiative. So we were talking about how to use Drawdown, and so that people can have local initiatives also. So anyways, that's thoughts.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks for joining us, and we're going to do a closing round, so you'll have a chance to share there as well. I'm going to invite you all now to stand up again and circle up the way we did at the beginning. I'd like to give us each a chance to reflect for a moment on what we're bringing with us from this afternoon.
We're going to inhale and make a fist, and then we're going to raise our arms up, and we're going to go, game on!